Okay, cool. All right. Hey friend, Catherine here, founder and creator of Meet Me at the Well. I'm so glad you found my little footprint here in the podcast world. It's an honor to take up some space in your heart and mind today, and I pray it brings great joy into your life, one episode at a time. I am so incredibly honored and excited to introduce our podcast guest, Savanna Sigmon. Savanna is a 32-year-old mom who lives in Mount Holly with her husband, Brett, and they have been married for 8 years. He works as a worship director at their church, and they have a precious 5-year-old son named Bear. When she was 26 years old, she suffered a massive brain bleeding stroke, but Jesus has been with her family every step of the way. I actually went to high school with Savanna, and I've been following her journey via social media. And just to be able to sit down and actually talk with you is really, really incredible. And it's just been such an incredible journey to watch as God has used you, Savanna, to show his goodness and his power and just a redemption story. And I'm so ready for others to hear your story as well, and just to bring strength and hope to others while bringing glory all to Jesus. So I'm just so glad to have you on the podcast, Savannah.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so incredible. I am just so excited to hear your full testimony because I've
Mhm.
just seen like little bits and pieces and updates via
Right.
Facebook. And so I just want to hear it all, girl. Just share your testimony
From the
and
beginning.
yeah, and just your healing journey, all with Jesus.
So all along the way, I'll say I have like felt led to share and like be very open about everything we've lived through because of like people like you have been able to keep up and see like Jesus's hand all the way through the story. Like people
Yeah.
that are praying or have no idea, like haven't talked to me or seen me in years. It's just a really incredible opportunity to share what he does and how he works.
Yeah, which is like so amazing, like just to be just right out the gate, like God is God. He has me. He has my family. I mean, that's just a testament in itself, just to like walk in that faith, and like know that God can get you through this, get your family through this. So that's just a testament right there to just who Jesus is to you.
And always like a sense of like if I'm living through this, there's purpose in this, and
Yeah,
I felt like an obligation to share that with people,
that's
like
beautiful.
rather than just like keep it to myself and whatever. Like it wasn't always beautiful picture perfect moments, like it's been a very hard journey, but I it was always heavy on me, like that I needed to share this along the way. So just it's been cool to see people that it's made it to even at this point with my little updates that I've given along the way.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, like that's what God does, like everything is to bring him glory. And
Mhm.
just to tell people about who he is, his character, his
Mhm.
power, and that's been, part of my personal story too, is that God just placed that on my heart that like I've been through a lot, but God, has gotten me through it
Mhm.
all, and he's restored and redeemed all of it, like 10 times what I've been through, and so it's just pointing it all back to him. So I love that we get to do that today.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let me hear it, girl. Let us hear it. I'm
Okay.
so excited.
We'll start with when the story got crazy. So prior to all of this, I would say life was just like normal life. Like I knew Jesus and walked with him from a very young age, had no idea that I would have some type of extreme medical crisis or anything. When my husband and I had been married for a year, we started trying to get pregnant, and after 13 months found out we were pregnant with a baby boy. We were over the moon excited. It was everything that we had wanted. My husband always says when he like tells our story that having a wife and a child, a family is all that he had wanted and dreamed of. So when everything happens how it does, it really throws our lives for a loop. So on October 7th, 2018, I was 26 years old and 21 weeks pregnant with our son, and went to church that Sunday and checked in to serve in the nursery. I had had a headache, but everybody was just like, oh, it's probably just a pregnancy headache. Take some Tylenol, drink a Pepsi. So I did and proceeded to check in to volunteer. My last memory is sitting down in the nursery to serve and thinking, this is something serious. I need to get help. But it was beyond being able to communicate that or like physically get up and find somebody to help me. There were other volunteers in the room, but I just remember thinking that I needed to get Lisa, who's the head of the ministry at our church, but my memory cuts out there.
Wow.
Um, and so what happened is in that moment, I suffered a brain bleeding stroke from a malformation that I was born with, but didn't know I had in my brain. So the increased blood flow and higher blood pressure from pregnancy caused it to rupture.
Wow.
Um, and whenever all of this happened, I was like having seizures and things like that. So nurses that came to check on me from the church community are thinking, well, it's probably pregnancy seizures or just
Mm.
something pregnancy related. So they get my husband and he comes and sees how bad things are. They get an ambulance and we're taken to the hospital. But our church community was so amazing. There were already people there from our church at the hospital when the ambulance got there in the hallways praying.
Wow.
Like
I'm gonna
they
cry.
were so faithful and incredible. And anyway, so I'm in the emergency room, and the emergency room doctor comes to find my husband, and she has tears in her eyes, and she says, it's not good. So then that was like the first clue, like this is more than just like something normal with pregnancy, like this
Yeah.
is something serious. So they, I guess they knew at that point that it was something with my brain and a brain bleed, but they didn't have the specifics because they had to get a neurologist, a neurosurgeon to the hospital to do a special type of scan to see what was really going on.
Yeah.
And that evening, when he was able to sit down with my husband and my parents, he he had no hope. He said it was really bad news, and my husband asked him, what is best case scenario that we can pray for, that we can have people praying for? And
Yeah.
he said, if she lives through the night or the end of the week, she will never be herself again, most likely never walk, never talk again, and will be in long term health care for the remainder of her life. There was no mention of the baby's life, and
Mm.
this was best case scenario. So, my husband broke down in tears. I mean, like I referred to earlier, this is we had been married 2 years, just barely 2 years when this
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
and he's being told that he's going to lose both of us. Um, anyway, so that obviously didn't happen. I'm
My
here,
God.
thankfully. Yeah,
Yeah.
praise God. When I so I don't have memory for 24 days.
Oh
My
my gosh.
first memory that I can come up with on my own without like anybody telling me anything is my husband hanging Halloween pumpkins in my hospital room for Halloween. And so that was 24 days from October 7th to Halloween. And when I started waking up and I could tell I was in a hospital, I couldn't communicate. I knew like something had to be seriously wrong, but
Yeah.
I just had this deep, deep peace that I knew I was alive because of prayer. And it
Wow.
was specifically, I knew the prayer had started out of our church community. This is without anybody saying anything to me.
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to like be able to like communicate and process and to learn like what we had been through. But when I was still and I guess you would call it like a medically induced coma, I was like, I remember feeling like really trapped and worried, but like frustrated because I couldn't communicate. And
Yeah.
so I was like trying to do sign language. I mean, I don't know sign language, but I learned like the alphabet in third grade in school. So it was like very broken, but I was like spelling with my hands. My
Wow.
husband didn't know what I was trying to communicate.
Yeah.
So he took a video of it and sent it to one of his college friends who knew sign language. And they told him, they're like, it's really broken, but she's spelling baby. She's trying to ask if the baby
Oh,
is okay.
yeah.
That was like what kept me going, like even
Yeah.
in that like unresponsive state.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and like another thing that kind of relates to that, I would get really restless at night. I mean, I'm sure because I felt like trapped and didn't know
Yeah.
what was wrong.
Yeah.
And they had to like, because of all the, like the wiring and cords and stuff, I had to be like strapped to the bed. And I would get like really restless with that at night. And one of the nurses one night was like, I'm gonna go find an ultrasound machine. And as soon as she would like roll it into the room and like put the Doppler on my stomach and Bear would pop up on the screen totally fine, I would like settle down. I could relax because that's everything that I was worried about.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so just really truly crazy. But we did it spent a total of 74 days in the hospital. So some of that was in the neuro ICU, some of that was in the step down unit, and then some of that was in a rehab hospital. But 74 days. And then a few days before Christmas, I wanted to have Christmas at home.
Yeah.
So we were discharged from the rehab hospital. And so keep in mind at this point, I'm very, very pregnant. I
Yeah.
did full time rehab in a hospital, 30 plus weeks pregnant. They were airlifting me into swimming pools so that I could do pool therapies and learn to move my body and walk and do
Oh,
everything again. Like,
wow.
yeah. Um, so then we went back to the hospital on February 11th to have a scheduled C-section to deliver Bear. Um, I don't know, do you want details with that, like
Yeah.
with the delivery
Yes.
and the birth and stuff?
Yes.
So, I had a spinal tap and they told me like this numbs you internally. Like if you feel anything, it should just be us like scooping the baby out, like after we've cut you open.
Yeah.
So I'm laying there on the table in the emergency room and they cut me open. I guess usually babies are like calm in there when they cut you open, but as soon as they cut me open, Bear was like kicking and punching and clawing. And I heard my OB say, do we have a vacuum in here? They had to vacuum him out of my
Oh
C-section
my
opening.
gosh.
He was born 7 pounds, 13 ounces, 21 and a half inches.
Wow.
I was literally like skin and bones with just this big round belly. Like I was on tube feed for probably about a month of my pregnancy, did this rehab, everything. My body knew, like Jesus knew all my nutrition and everything went to him and keeping
Yeah.
him healthy and
That's
growing him.
incredible. That
He
is
was
so
born
incredible.
without any complications or anything. He had no
Wow.
issues.
That is all God. Like
I know. Only
your
Jesus.
yeah, your
Only
entire
Jesus.
story, girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've been covered in chills this entire time.
Yeah.
Like God bumps, I
Yeah.
mean, God is so incredible, like
Mhm.
just I'm here talking to you, like looking at you, you're like you walk, you talk, you're doing all these things, like your baby is so healthy, like
Mhm.
oh my gosh, Savannah.
That's what I'm saying. If I hadn't lived this and someone was telling me this story, I would be like, that seems exaggerated or that's not possible. But only
Jesus,
Jesus.
man.
I've lived
Only
it.
Jesus.
And not only am I myself, I've even had people recognize, and I feel the same way. I'm the most myself I've ever been. Like
Wow.
through coming on to the other side of this, I'm completely myself, which wasn't even in best case scenario, but
Yeah.
I'm the most myself I've ever been.
Wow. And that's just like because you have this peace that God, like God has gotten you through all of this
Right.
and he was there with you that entire time. What a powerful story, girl. That
Mhm.
is, oh my gosh. God is just so, I'm like never not amazed by who he is, like his
Right.
character,
It
his
never gets
goodness.
old hearing how incredible.
Never. Like it
I know.
never ever does. And like I'm I can like relate in the way that like I'm my most self on this side of my healing journey too, and like that's
Right.
what like God does, like you go through such a difficult and hard season and then Jesus is just like, but I have you.
He takes the broken and he makes it
Yeah.
beautiful. Like
Yeah.
who could do that? Who could take a story like that and
Yeah.
make it something beautiful and use suffering and trauma and things like that to make us into who he wanted us to be all along for
Exactly.
his most glory and purpose and
Yes.
everything.
Yes, only him. And like
Yes.
what a testament for the doctors too. I mean, the doctor didn't even think you were going to make it through the night.
No,
And
but listen, he has even acknowledged he doesn't take all the credit. He has acknowledged it took more than him.
wow.
And agreed that I'm only here because of prayer. And this is like
Wow.
one of the top neurosurgeons in the world.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane.
I know.
Look at God. That's
Yeah.
not like There are so many, my nose, I've been like over here crying, so my nose is like,
You didn't know to have your tissues, did you?
I did it. Should have known. Um, but like God, there's always so many people a part of our story. Like, and it's so
Mhm.
easy to get so focused on us and be like, why would God allow these things to happen to me? Or like, why so much? And it's just like, there are so many pieces that go into our story. And even if like right then, like you sharing your story now, you don't know who this is going to touch and like transform
Right.
and change, and
Hmm.
just the fact that you like God, are here is
I know.
mind blowing of just Jesus and his power and his love. I mean, he's just so loving.
Hmm.
I am so honored to be sitting here talking to you.
I'm so honored to be here talking about it. Listen, against all odds. I mean, truly, every day I wake up, like this has been very, very hard. I'm not going to negate that, but
Yeah.
truly, every day it can be hard, and also, like, I will never stop being grateful and amazed that this has all happened the way that it has.
Yeah, what has it done like for your faith in God, like and just the struggle? Has it been like a struggle to give him praise or what does that look like?
No, I mean, I thankfully have been able to, like, even on the hard days, but when I was first like getting settled back into the world and trying to process, I mean, still I would say 6 years out, I'm still processing everything that I've been through. But I asked my husband, like, earlier on in my journey, I'm like, why would God allow this to happen to me? Like, was he mad at me? Like, I don't understand. And he didn't really even have an answer. So he went to his friend, um, who has worked as a pastor, and he told my husband to tell me that I was worthy of the suffering.
Wow.
And at that time, I was not ready to hear that answer. That made me angry. I'm like, yeah, easy for him to say. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the one like waking up, fighting to stay alive every day and take
Yeah.
care of a child. But as time has passed and I have processed things and I've studied Jesus more, like Jesus suffered. And when we suffer, it makes us more like him. And that is the purpose of our life.
Yeah.
Anything that makes us more like him for his glory.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And like I used to ask that question too, like did I do something to make God so
Right.
angry with me that he
Mm-hmm.
would like allow me to go through all these things or like make me suffer? And
Right.
you know, God doesn't owe us like anything. He gave us the ultimate sacrifice. And for him, for that pastor to say, like, you're worthy of the sacrifice or the suffering
Oh.
is like so profound, and like just to think
Mm-hmm.
about because, you know, Jesus knew, like, before the things that we even went through, like, God knew what was going to happen. And he knew, like, that he was going to get us through, that he was going
Right.
to walk through every single moment with us, and that like the cross points directly to God, points directly to the blood of Jesus. Your story points directly to God. My
Mm-hmm.
story, God, like, and that's just like you putting in that phrase is just really profound. I love that. Like, and just knowing that you were able to praise God, like, no matter what is just amazing. And like for your husband to turn straight to God, like just to go to prayer, ask your church to come around you and pray, and for you to wake up knowing that like you were there because of prayer.
So
Like,
then when I can communicate and they're telling me, like, there was not a day that went by that there weren't people there from our church coming to see me, pray for me, bring
wow.
food. Our church was such an incredible community around us that one of the nurses wrote a paper on the experience of like having me as a patient and how our community cared for us and loved us.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's like so important, to like be
Right.
a part of a church body and to be a part of something that like that community, because you
Right. Like,
have
we can't do this
people.
life alone. We were never made to do it alone.
Yeah, no. And the Bible tells us when one or two or more people come together, or is it one or more? One or more?
Or more.
Two or more. Yeah, it's got to
Yeah.
be two.
Yeah.
Two or more people come together, like God answers. He's there and
Yep.
he's with
He's
us.
with
And
us.
like that's the power of prayer, and
Mhm.
like that's like, oh man, it's just beautiful. I'm just so in shock right now. I can't even
And you knew pieces
form
of
my
it, but like to hear it all,
sentences.
you're like, what?
I know. I can't
It's
even form
crazy.
my sentences. I'm like so in shock right now of just like Jesus, like
Only Jesus.
only
Jesus.
Jesus.
Hmm.
What has this done for like planning for you and your family? Because like your birth story, I mean, I went into my birth story or like my birth plan, like saying, I want this, this, and this, and like
Hmm.
thinking that like, oh, it's gonna be all perfect and I was gonna get
Right.
exactly what I wanted. And like I like took God out of the equation and I ended up like having the complete opposite of what I like wanted. I ended up having to have a C-section. Thankfully, Dawson was not in there kicking and
Right.
they didn't have to vacuum him out, but
Yeah.
he was born without complications and all the things that I wanted to have happen after happened, like had a healthy baby boy and like got to do like nursing and like we are so bonded. I was so afraid that if I had a C-section baby, I wasn't gonna like be connected to my child and
Mhm.
like it's the polar opposite.
You're like, oh no, what if it would have happened differently and he was even more connected?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I always say like babies and birth and pregnancy is such a way that God shows he has control over those
yeah,
things and it's going to happen how he has planned and we have to trust him in that. I mean, when I started communicating and like knew what had happened to me and one of the first things they told me is you're going to have a C-section. Thankfully for me, I was just like, I mean, at this
to have
point,
your
okay,
baby.
great. Like as long as we get him healthy, like it's whatever.
Yeah,
But yeah, when I was waking up in the hospital, another thing that I just like had this sense of was I remember looking at the date on the whiteboard in my hospital room, and it was like the Lord spoke over me just a day at a time. Because I remember looking in that date and thinking, like, when is this baby going to be born? How am I going to make it to then? Like, how am I going to take care of a baby? How any of this, Lord?
yeah.
And it was like just a day at a time. Like, just face the day in front of you.
Wow.
Which I always think of the scripture like he gives us our daily bread. He doesn't give us next month's bread. He doesn't give us next week's bread, like
Yeah,
today's bread.
yeah, that
So
is so good.
our family has gotten to this moment by facing each day just that day.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And like even the Bible verse I read this morning was like about anxiety, and like not living in anxiety, not worrying about tomorrow and just focusing on today.
Right.
Tomorrow has its own worries and God gives us enough strength for the day that we're in and like it's so wild because I've been hearing that like just recently, like thinking of like the things that I want to do and like all these like things that God has called me to do. I should rephrase that, like
Mhm.
the passions and desires that God has placed in my heart just for this ministry in general. And like God is just like one day at a time. Just take your steps
Truly. Like
one
those
step at a
scriptures, I
time.
feel like when I was younger and I heard them, I'm like, oh, that's just a nice way to like tell us not to worry, like live happy. Like he literally means it. Like
Yeah.
wake up each day and trust me and spend the day with me, and I'm going
Yeah.
to get you where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, speaking of plans, like, it's all laid out. Like, God had a plan for Bear, and
Hmm.
his plan was for him to make it and for him to be your son and to be Brett's son and for y'all to have
Right.
that family, And, like, I can't even imagine what this has done for, like, your marriage, and, like,
Right.
just
Yeah.
the foundation that this has built even more. Like, what has that done for y'all?
It has been like the wildest experience. Thankfully, I married a man that loves Jesus and meant his marriage vows to me because unfortunately it seems that that is not common in our world today,
Yeah.
but we were so early in marriage and we were so young. I mean, couldn't have seen this coming or expected this. I was asking Brett about it last night and the way he worded it was a stark shock to the system. Like, I mean, there's really not even words for the
Yeah.
experience, and he has memory from it all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk about traumatic. Like he lived each day of it and still has the memories.
Yeah.
Um, but just so unexpected to happen so early in life and marriage. We joke like this is something an older elderly couple would have like we would have expected to go through like older in age.
Yeah.
There's a statistic that couples 30 and younger that either the husband or the wife suffers a traumatic brain injury, the divorce rate is like 96%.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So, I mean, every day we wake up and choose to fight for our family, fight for our marriage. It's hard, but we know that Jesus is at the center of it all.
Yeah. That's so incredible. That's a high stat. Holy
Yeah.
moly. That's so heartbreaking. Like, and that's like just a thing I'm gonna be real open about. I don't know how people do it without Jesus. Like,
No.
I
I mean, I
really,
always felt like that, but then going through this, I'm like, it's truly not possible. Not
yeah.
possible.
I mean, where do you find your faith and strength and hope, and like joy to face every day and to know that like God made that union for a reason and like brought y'all together and has this story happening and like that God can make the impossible happen, and just living out that faith every single day. I mean, and oh my gosh, I mean, just the stuff that y'all have been through, like
I know.
raising Bear, like, oh my
Well,
goodness.
and so cool. Like Bear knows our story. Like
Wow, yeah.
obviously like a 5-year old version, but like when I'm putting him to bed at night, he'll be like, "Mommy, tell me this story." And he wants to hear the story of like what we've been through. And he knows like the church prayed and they didn't think we were gonna make it, and all of these things happened, and everybody prayed. Like this is where we are now, only
Yeah,
because of Jesus. So
only because of Jesus. And this kid has a insane testimony already. And he's
I know he was
like,
literally born with it. Yeah,
wow. And like you don't know how God is gonna use that for him too, And like
right.
that's the wild part. Like this kid has already like been birthed into a story, a huge
Yeah.
testimony of like
Like
his
there's obviously a purpose for his life. He's
yes,
here against all odds. Yep.
yes. He wasn't supposed to make it, and he did.
Mm-mm.
Like that is, oh my gosh. I just want to like
No.
jump up and down and like give Jesus just like, oh, all the praise. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to hold it together over here. If you could not
It's a
tell,
lot. It's a lot. I know.
it's just, oh, it's incredible. I'm just like, I don't have words. Like,
It
it's
seems
not,
like it can't be real, right? That's why
yeah.
I started. If someone sat down and told me this story and they were like walking and talking like me, I'd be like, "You're crazy. This
Oh,
can't be."
oh my gosh. I mean,
But all of the people that prayed for us, I mean, there's people that I'll never get to like thank,
yeah,
face to face. Like people all over the world were praying, but there are people in our church who say to this day, like our family's story changed their life forever, and they will never pray the same because they saw the power of prayer and how our community came together and literally prayed our family through this situation.
yeah. And now they get to see you like a
Right.
living, walking testimony to that prayer that they were praying. And like, it's so crazy.
Yeah, prayer
Savannah.
makes a difference. That's why I tell people
It
all the
does.
time, like, do not go through something without telling people and asking them to pray. Like prayer makes a
Yes,
difference.
it
Makes a
does. And
difference.
like, sorry, go.
That was just it. Prayer makes a difference. I always just want people to know that. Like,
Yeah, it does. I mean, like, it then just like it changes the situation, but like it also changes us too,
right.
Like it deepens our relationship with God, it deepens our faith. And, God cares so much about our like heart posture and, you know, how we're walking through something and how we're reacting to something. And just like, oh my gosh, how many lives your story has already touched through just that prayer group and at the hospital. And I mean, you starting to share your story, it's just the beginning. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm shook at what God is really going to just do with your story and how many lives he's going to change. I mean, it's just so profound. I mean, it
I
really
know.
is like he sees that big picture, and I think that's like when people are going through things they see just like the finite, like because that's all we're allowed to see. God has that full realm, and but he knows. And it's just like knowing that God, if you pray, with that little mustard seed of faith, God turns it into you. He turns it
Mhm.
into
To a miracle of,
testimony.
yeah,
Yeah, a miracle, and like that's that's the beauty of it all. Like we don't need to be like, okay, God, I 1000% believe, but like now just hearing your story and knowing my story and other people's story and all the stories in the Bible, it's just like, what can't you do?
right.
No,
Well,
like
and
what?
sometimes I know prior in my life, like you hear the stories in the Bible and you're like, oh, I fully believed he did those things.
Yeah,
But I hadn't necessarily seen it that dramatically like play out in real life in the real world.
yeah,
And then like literally one day I wake up in the middle of my own like Bible story miracle.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
crazy.
That is crazy because like it's so easy to be like, well, do you still do those things? Like,
Right.
do we still see those types of miracles? And we do. We see them
Yeah.
every day, and like we just have to share them like we're doing to point
Right.
to the fact and the truth that like God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and he's never going to change. And we just have to have that faith.
Mm-hmm.
And just speaking of that, like if someone is going through a season of unexpected health struggles or walking through a season with their spouse that's like just ridden with fear of what the future might look like and walking through that healing together, what's something that has helped you and your husband grow closer together and grow closer with God?
Just taking it one day at a time and relying on the strength of Jesus because we truly didn't have any and we can't do anything in our own strength. Just to face each day and keep going, keeping a positive outlook, which a big piece of that is having a healthy church community you're a part of. For us, some specific things that we have done is making sure we laugh and like even in the like craziest of circumstances, we can find something to laugh about. Keeping our bodies moving, however that has looked in the different seasons, getting fresh air, staying in constant prayer and dependence on Jesus
I love
because
that.
that's what we need.
Yeah, yeah. It's all like just staying connected to Jesus and like I'm like a huge proponent for like nature, like
Yes.
God has given us this beautiful, beautiful world to just be out in and to, feel his hug on our skin by the sun
The
or
sun and the fresh air is truly so healing. Another
it is.
thing that I want to mention is I'm a big, big supporter of like Christian counseling. I have a Christian counselor that I see who has been amazing in my journey. She actually suffered the same brain injury as
Oh,
me, and I found her as my counselor. So that has just been a true godsend.
yeah.
But that is another thing that we have used along the way just to navigate trauma in life and
Yeah,
everything.
I love that. I had an amazing Christian counselor before we actually moved to Virginia. And it was so hard for me to find like a counselor or therapist or something that I like felt really safe with. Um,
Mhm.
and the last one that I had, like she was just like she came from our church and she was
Mhm.
just so, I don't know how to put it, like loving and gentle, and she just walked through the things that I shared with her, and she gave me a new perspective. And I definitely like am always like Christian counseling.
Yes.
Because like you don't want to just find anybody who could lead you like in a way that's gonna take you farther away from who you need to be.
Right. Whenever things would, I mean, obviously things along this whole journey have been like overwhelming and we didn't know how to navigate. But then my husband Brett started having some health issues, and I was like, this is my breaking point. If we don't have him healthy, like how do we go on?
Yeah.
And off and on, we would like talk about Christian counseling and that being something that we could look into. And then we just got to a point where I was like, we have to look into this. And I was like, if I'm going to have a counselor, I want it to be Christian. Like, I want to make sure, like you said, it is pointing me to Jesus. Like, that's such a big part of this
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And then when we called and left a voicemail for this specific counselor we had found, she called back on my husband's phone later that evening and she said, I didn't even finish listening to your voicemail because I also had an AVM in my brain that ruptured and I definitely want to work with your wife.
It is
Catherine,
so wild.
like people don't even survive these type of brain bleeds. That there's another one in the area and she's now a Christian counselor and that's who I see is like unreal. Only Jesus. Only Jesus.
Yeah, only Jesus. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man. The God bumps just never stop coming. I mean, seriously, like he ordained all of these moments, all of
Right.
these like I read I love Francine Rivers. And there's a book that she wrote, Scarlet Thread, I think is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read it or
No.
it talks about so like the Scarlet Thread, it's like these different stories and the like at the end, this one lady was like making a quilt and like she made all of her stories like together.
Mm-hmm.
And just that constant was Jesus,
Yeah,
and
I love that. Yeah.
he brought all of the pieces together to make just like this beautiful picture. And, when you just step back and you just see like God just ordains and intertwines everything so beautifully, and he has a purpose. He has a plan. And all we have to do is just trust that he has that next step, that you were saying, just take one more step, one more step. And
Mm-hmm.
God, like, brought this woman through the same thing before in order
Right.
to speak even more hope and truth and even to bring even more glory to God. Like,
Right. Yeah.
that's
Well,
insane.
down to the fact that I was born with this in my brain. Like when I was knit together in my mother's womb, like I had this malformation and he knew that it was going to play out this way in my
Yeah.
life. Like that was a part of his purpose for me.
Yeah. And for your counselor, right? Like,
Right. Right.
for y'all to
And
find
for
each
Bear
other.
and for every piece of the story, like only Jesus, Catherine, only
Holy
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I just, wow. I literally, I'm gonna have a worship moment after we get done with this because this is crazy.
I know it's crazy. It's
Uh,
what I tell people. I'm like, I don't, I'm just as shocked and amazed as you are. Like, and I lived through it.
yeah, wow. I mean, I just really want this podcast to like touch so many people. I feel like I'm just like, I mean, God's gonna give them the hope. Your story is gonna give them
Right.
the hope, so I don't have to have all the right words to say.
He'll take care of it. He's
I'm
already
like,
got a plan. He's already
yeah,
got a plan.
exactly. I'm like, Catherine, come on, give something. But you're giving it all, and Jesus is giving it all. Man,
Yeah.
okay. Let's talk about some practical steps because, like, I feel
Yes.
like that's something that is so important, and I just love leaving everybody with some real life practical steps for them to like use in their lives. So, like, what are some practical steps that have just helped you along your healing journey and helped you with your husband too, like y'all's relationship, um, just to like keep the love alive and
Yeah. Just remembering what brought us together in the first place and what our marriage is built on, like
yeah.
coming back to it all being about Jesus. I think people forget that the purpose of marriage is to make us more like Jesus
Yes.
and just staying in constant communication with him, like through each day, relying on him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I yeah, it like breaks my heart to see so many people who, are like going through divorce or separation and just like I don't know, the message that our world just kind of preaches right now is like go do
That
you.
marriage is disposable. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
Go do
heartbreaking.
you or like, life's supposed to be comfortable and it's not. And marriage is God's greatest gift to us to help us like see and understand how our relationship is supposed to be with Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
And like it's the closest thing that we have here on earth to the covenant we share with God. And like,
Right. Yeah, it's our real earthly picture of that heavenly relationship.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And it's
walking,
hard, but it's beautiful.
yeah. yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing easy about marriage, but like there's nothing easy about a relationship with God either.
Right.
And it's just
Exactly.
like realizing how much God loves us and like realizing how much our spouse loves us too,
Hmm.
like and walking out that grace and that, that covenant that Jesus has really called us to just solidify and live out and point people to him. And yeah, we had a rough first year of marriage, but nothing compared to y'all. I mean, holy moly.
Yeah. Crazy, right? I mean, well, and they say like when you know, like
Yeah.
we had known, so we met in July, got engaged in December, married in May. We had known each other less than a year when we got married. And
Wow.
then so soon into marriage, we're like thrown into
Holy
this
cow.
test and fire, you could call it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I say. I'm still processing what we've been through.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a
And
lot.
it's like back to back. Holy moly.
Yeah.
Jesus, though, won't he do it?
Right? He'll
Won't
do
he
it.
do it? And he brought
He'll do
you
it.
like the most perfect guy to walk you through
Yeah.
all these things. It has been so beautiful, like just to see your updates on Facebook and to see your family and like to see Brett walking by you, and
Yes.
like holding you. Like, I'm like, gosh, she has really found just like the most incredible man that could have walked through this with her, like,
Truly. Like Jesus knew.
yeah,
So then I look back and I'm like, well, no wonder we met. And it was like we just knew like right away because
wow.
the Lord knew everything that was gonna come. Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Yes. Like he is
Man,
outside of time. He already had all of this planned. Only
that
Jesus. Only
only
Jesus.
Jesus. Only
Hmm.
Jesus. That's like even more beautiful to the story to like know how much peace and confirmation that y'all had like when you first met and like
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's not like and like y'all got married fast, and like
Right.
what would have happened if like you didn't and like you didn't have that confirmation or peace and like you would have just
Hmm.
been engaged or not,
Right. It could have
just
happened
dating.
at any point. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It like everything was in God's timing in Jesus's plan.
Wow. And now you're here.
Yeah. Crazy with a wild, healthy 5-year-old boy.
Man, yeah. How is Bear? I love his name, by
My
the way.
goodness. Thank you. He like totally lives up to his name, is
Yeah.
like wild and strong and loud and amazing. But yes, he's great. He started kindergarten this year.
Oh, wow. I'm sure that was
So
wild for y'all.
right, all the mixed emotions, but truly like I found myself more than sad just being like so thankful and like proud of like raising this little human
Yeah.
to make it to this point, like truly.
Yeah, that's just, man, he's in kindergarten. And like, the doctor didn't even mention him when you were in the hospital the
Right.
first day.
No.
That's,
They expected my organs to start shutting off. My body wasn't supposed to be able to support a pregnancy. When I was still in the ICU, I have like tiny pieces of memories of like nurses, OB nurses come into my ICU room and putting the Doppler to my stomach. I'm laying here on my deathbed, they're saying, and the a healthy baby would pop up on the monitor, and the nurses would look like they were going to faint. They're like,
oh,
"How can this be?" They're
Jesus.
saying like, "Yeah, her body's not going to can't support herself. How's it going to grow another life?" And because talking about timing, because I was 21 weeks, he was not considered viable. If it would have been 24 weeks along or more, the first thing they would have done, I think, is deliver him
Oh, my
because
Lord.
he would have been considered viable and that would have been safer for him.
Yeah.
But truly, Jesus knew, like, I feel like having him in my belly, like, I knew I was fighting for more than just me, too. I knew that there was a baby. And
Anna, my gosh.
I know.
Man, God, right? Like,
Yep.
it's just incredible. I mean, your body, It couldn't
How
do it,
amazing
but
God
God,
makes our bodies to
yes,
grow babies this way. And even in like the most dire circumstances, like our body
yes.
knows what to do and Jesus can grow another healthy life.
Yeah, he can make that happen. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. When everything points to no,
Yep.
you can point to
Everything.
God who will
Hmm.
say yes, like, and he can make it happen. Oh my goodness. That's just, oh, I'm so blah, blah, blah. That's how I feel right now. It's blah, blah, blah.
Same, same. That's how I feel all the time,
Oh
truly.
my gosh. How did y'all come up with Bear, like his name?
I know that's like a number one question, and I, well, I'll tell the story. We wanted to have a boy name and a girl name. So when we found out the gender, we would know the name of the baby,
Yeah.
which I'm so thankful we did because that was 2 weeks before the brain
Oh
bleed. But
my,
knowing his gender and name, I feel like had already made me so much more connected to him.
that's beautiful.
But I was like miserable laying on the couch one day after work, and my husband came in the door. He had been listening to the band Need to Breathe in his car. That's like our favorite band. And the lead singer's name is Bear. And he
Oh,
came in the door. We had a girl name picked, but not a boy name. And he was like, Savannah, I think I have a name for if the baby's a boy. And I could tell he was like so unsure about how I was going to feel about it. But he said Bear. And I was like, oh my goodness, Bear's perfect. That has to be his name. And it was
oh
like
my,
decided from that moment. And then everything we went through, like it only made sense. He was in there fighting and strong and like totally like a mama bear, baby bear situation. But yeah.
that's incredible. I love that. I wasn't even gonna, I always wondered like why you named him Bear. Like when I saw on Facebook, I was like, that's really cute, but like I really want to know like why.
Yeah.
And now it's just like adds
It
to,
just totally makes sense, right?
yeah,
But like
yes.
we chose it before everything. So when everybody was praying, they made prayer bracelets and they said on them, like, pray for Savannah and baby bear. But the B in bear was lowercase. They thought it was just like a nickname we were calling him. So then when he was born and we announced it and it was like uppercase B bear, everybody's like, oh, that's really his name?
That's his
We're like,
name.
yes.
Wow. God is so cool, man. I mean, just like the fact that your husband was listening to that song and just had that even pop into his mind to, oh my
And
God.
that I was like, oh, that's the perfect name because it's not like a super common name or
Yeah,
like, yeah, I
you
could
didn't
tell he
fight
didn't
it.
expect me to love it. But as soon as I heard it, I was like, knew that that had to be it.
Wow. I mean, God is the God of details, is he not?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
so incredible. That band they need to hear that story. I'm
So
gonna tag
people
them.
have said that, yeah.
I'll tag them. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, this was like seriously, this was incredible. I'm not lost for words often, but I'm lost for words. Like,
That story will do that, won't it, Catherine? I know.
yes,
I'm like,
yes. It
yeah,
seriously will. And I thank you so much. Like, I never know how people are going to be like, oh, yeah, I totally want to share my story or whatever.
yeah.
And like, you were just so ready. And
Yes.
just thank you. Thank you so
Of
much
course.
for,
Thank you for asking me.
I mean, thank you for your heart and being vulnerable and just laying it all out here for us. I mean, that's, what we have to do in order to point people
Yes.
to Jesus. And like, it's so wild how, I don't know, we just stayed connected via social media and all this happened. And like, God's a God of details again, just,
Right. We
it's
knew
so,
even when we met years ago that this moment would be happening.
yes. And that's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I
I
just
love
feel
it.
so comfortable and at peace with like knowing our lives are just like completely in the hands of Jesus,
Yes.
It can be
And who knows where
terrifying.
we'll be in even 5 years, Catherine, but Jesus knows.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he
Thank God.
does. And we'll be
Yeah.
here to cheer each other on.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I keep like joking with people. Hopefully, my next 5 years will be a little less eventful than the last, but whatever. We'll face whatever comes just a day at a time.
Yeah, just a day at a time. And that's
Mhm.
like, oh man, I really hope that um I don't even know how to finish that sentence. Like I want y'all to have that, I don't want to say easy, but like I want y'all to walk in that land of milk and honey,
Mhm.
and like be like, yes, we're here. But like I feel like you're already there,
We
and
are,
been
but
there.
yeah.
But like, because you made it through, and like
Mhm.
you have your precious family. I'm so excited to see what God's going to do just through you and through the story and through Bear's life, through just your marriage, just everything. And in 5 years, man, I
Who
might have you
knows?
back on the show just to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Oh my goodness.
Because I know it's gonna be insane. I know it's gonna
Yeah.
be wild. I have that feeling. God's about to rock some lives in the
Yeah.
world. I mean, we're here to be kingdom growers, right? And like world changers. And that's what we get to do. It's what you get to do with your story. And I mean,
Only Jesus.
only Jesus.
Only Jesus.
Only Jesus. It was seriously like such an honor to meet you at the well and talk about how a life with Jesus literally helps you get through even the most difficult seasons. And for everybody out there, I just pray that those who are listening are filled with hope and encouragement and comfort as you continue to meet Jesus at the well. Just keep going, friend. Just keep showing up. And he's there to meet you and to talk with you and to show you just what he can do with your life. And you can find Incredible Savannah on Instagram at SAVSIGMON. And we love you, friend, and we are here cheering you on. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.